All right. We may be making some forward-looking statements today, so please base your purchasing decisions on current features and functionality and not on any forward-looking statements we may be making. Hello, I'm Jennifer Lee, Senior Admin Evangelist from Salesforce, and hello everyone. Welcome to our March Automate This, and I come to you live every month. Come back to the same page to watch this again on video on demand. And the best way to be notified when we go live is to set the reminder on the live stream episode page. You get a reminder on the day of the event. And to interact with the audience, post your comments. To interact with me and my guest presenters, start your question with the Q colon so I can quickly scan through and identify your questions. So here's what you'll learn in today's episode from our two guest presenters. 3 things you'll learn from Narender: how to set up Slack integration in Salesforce, how to use screen flows in Slack, and how to approve Salesforce approval requests directly via Slack. 3 things you will learn from Antoine: how to use Flow Orchestration to integrate with ERP vendors like SAP and NetSuite, how to leverage Slack to streamline your business processes, and how to get visibility into the overall execution of your process. So today we have a returning Flownatic and a Salesforce MVP, Narender Singh, and Senior Director of Product Management at Salesforce, Antoine Cabot. We're going to talk about how to use Flow or Flow Orchestration and Slack to automate workflows. So welcome Narender and Antoine to Automate This. And Antoine will also give us a sneak peek into his Flow Orchestration roadmap and answer your product questions as well. So Narender, this isn't your first Automate This rodeo. So you were on our very interactive episode discussing the record triggered flows. So record triggered flow design pattern. So welcome back.
Thank you for
And
having me. Feels like home.
and if you missed the episode, you can follow the short link right below on the screen to access that recording. And Narender, how did you become a Flownatic? And how did you get started on that journey?
So it dates back to my early days of learning Salesforce, 2018. When I was learning Salesforce, I was doing a lot of community questions, answering, and a lot of stuff. And I came across an answer from Deepak Anand, who used to be pretty active back in the day. And he answered using this flow. I never saw this prior to uh, checking that answer. And that caught my eye. And then I looked into more how flows are working, what can they do, and then I realized the real power, how much you can do with them. Now you can do a lot, but
Right.
still back then you could do a lot. You could basically replace it at least to some extent with Apex. So yeah, that's how to flows, because I've really found it very interesting,
And
and the
what
fact that all admins can leverage this power.
and what type of cool automations have you built?
All sorts of automation. It's hard to put a uh, picture how mostly I come into place normally when there are things where development is involved, because I tend to uh, leverage my team, my awesome admins team, to build the flows. But I come into the picture when there is some custom development needed for screen components or Apex actions. So that's where I really come in. But overall, I have built some crazy flows which does not fit into canvas, no matter how much you zoom out.
And so you blog, and how can viewers access your content, and what type of content do you have?
Yes, so on my blog, I try to do a lot of how to's, because that's the thing a lot of people struggle with: how to do this, how to do that. So I try and come up with solutions which are very known, and there are not so easy solutions available on the web. So I try to come up with an easy solution. And also, here and there, I try to create some utility tools. For example, I have built a lot of Apex actions, so those are a part of my GitHub repo, so I try to block them as well so people can access them, install them, and just use into their flows or just record pages if they are Lightning components. Yeah.
Great. And for those of you who haven't visited Narender's blog, I do have the address below there. Force Panda is his blog. Awesome. Thanks, Narender.
Thanks, Jen.
So before we go any further, Antoine, let's level set with our viewers. So can you explain to our viewers what's the difference between flow and flow orchestration, and when would I use one over the other?
Yeah, thanks, Jen. That's a very good question, and a question I've been asked like probably 1,000 times now. So I will give you three good reasons for using flow orchestration over flow. And I know on this episode we have a lot of people watching that have a very big experience in flow, and they might probably say you can do this in flow in some way, but it's just much easier to do it in flow orchestration. So the first one is multi-user. If you have a process, think about an approval, for example, that includes a person submitting the approval, the record, and someone else approving that record. That's typically something where flow is like, it's difficult to build with flow because you don't have that notion of coordinating work between two different users. That's one area where flow orchestration really makes it a lot easier. The second thing is work assignments. And I would give you an example. I was chatting with a customer 2 weeks ago at Trailblazer DX, and the customer was telling me that he had a very complex flow with a lot of decisions. And at the end of each of these of the path, he was sending an email to a different person. It's like, okay, that's great. Like, you really use Flow to notify the right person at the right time via email. But what if we actually, instead of sending an email, we create some work item for that person to complete, and then you can track when the work is actually done within Salesforce. That's what you get with Flow orchestration. You get this notion of a new object, new record created for every type of work, for every piece of work that you're asking a human to do in Flow orchestration. And that's all built for you. You don't have to do anything in Flow orchestration to have that. You basically have that for free. And then the last piece is auditing capabilities. Right now in Flow, you don't have an easy way to actually see exactly what happened in your flow. You have to use the debugger, things like that. With Flow orchestration, we introduce the notion of logs. So now you can see exactly what happened during the execution of your process, and you can know how much time it took for that specific person to complete the work item, things like that. So you can quickly identify bottlenecks and improve your process by using Salesforce reports. So that are the three main reasons. So multi-user, if you have work assignments, it's really important to use Flow orchestration. And then finally, if you need auditing capabilities, that's usually where the product really shines.
Great. I appreciate that explanation. All right, Narender, can you share with us your use case and solution using approvals, Flow, and Slack? Narender, sorry, you're on mute, I think.
Yes, I'm on mute. Okay. Okay, very typical. Anyways, so my use case for today, to establish what we are going to do, it's better to wrap the whole logic around the use case so it's easier to follow along. So to start things with, basically we will be building a process which multi-user interaction process, where we will be onboarding a user and we will look at how a typical life cycle looks like for an onboarding user. So normally a user comes in, and imagine this company is using Salesforce and Slack. So what happens is, when this new employee record is created in Salesforce, we expect a Salesforce flow is sent to the Slack for this employee, and the assumption is they are also added to the Slack workspace. And the idea is they are able to just fill in the form, their preferences about themselves, their address, blah blah blah, right from within the Slack. and submit it. And once this submission is done, the manager of the new employee gets a Slack notification about approving the submission from this new user, and they are just able to approve this right from the Slack using their mobile app or desktop app. So yeah, that's the use case we are going to implement for today. All right. Can we already start with the implementation?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. Okay, so here I am in my org, and I have a user that is named as Jane Doe, and we have some data. So let's just look at how the whole flow looks like, or how the whole process looks like from a demo perspective, and then we will dive into the details of how we have implemented this whole structure. So a new user comes in. Since I have to create a new user to actually fire the flow, but for the sake of testing, I'll invoke the action which prompts or sends this flow to the Slack to this new user. So I'll just trigger this, and alongside I also will open the Slack for both the users. This is the manager for Jane Doe, which is me, Fospanda, and we have Jane Doe here using this Slack. So let's trigger the flow, or just send this flow to Slack and see how things look. And we will dive into the details later. So I'll just run this flow, and what's gonna happen is Jane Doe will receive a prompt in the Slack where that's interesting. Okay, something that should not happen during a demo. Apparently everything looks good, but we can try and
That's when we know it's live, right, Narender?
this should have worked. I don't really
It worked a
know.
million times before, and now it doesn't.
Yeah, that's every demo story gone wrong. So let me just switch and see what's going wrong. All right, okay. So Salesforce user is not connected to Slack. Okay, that's weird. But we can check this. So this is how you can actually check how if your user is uh, connected to Slack. So if I log in as this user, which will take a second. So log in. This might take a while. Oh man, I didn't see this coming. But hopefully we will be able to get this sorted soon. So here you can check if you log in into your org, and if within your user settings you will be able to see if your user is mapped or here or not. Apparently this is logged in, so it actually shows that you are connected. So this requires some additional effort to see what's going wrong. What I can also test is can check if my user is also connected. Yes, apparently both the users are connected. Perhaps a Slack setting. Well, a second. Everything looks good. Everything looks good here as well. That's weird. Okay, maybe let's give it a try again. Nope. That doesn't seem to be the case. Yeah, so basically what we can do is we can reinstall the app and let's connect the app back to Salesforce, and that should hopefully fix our problems. So let me refresh this and see if it works. Okay, seems to be working. So what I'll do is I'll go in here and I can just remove the Slack app from here and hopefully reinstall it. It should fix the problem. So you can remove the app like this. And as you see, Slack app is removed. Let's add it again. Okay, this should. So this is how you normally set up your Slack app, which wouldn't be okay, wrong app. So once you click on the button, this is how you will be able to add your Slack app to your Salesforce. This will be a part of a blog article that has more details about how you integrate this within Salesforce. But since we are at it, so why not? Okay, so now you are connected to your Slack app. Now what we need to do is we also need to connect Jane Doe's account to Slack. So let's try that. We can just open this in browser. Yes. We don't need this. We can quit this. Alright, so we have the Slack app ready here, and we can also come in here and say add this, and we can go into messages. Apparently they should be prompted with the configuration message to configuration. Let's see if we can change anything. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. So what I'm gonna try is see if this works. It doesn't. Let's see, window is here. Also try. Okay. All right, so apparently the issue here is that the Slack is not able to register the Jane Doe. So what we can also try here. Okay, now it works. Okay, let's give it a try now. This is interesting. So maybe we can give it a try again and see if it works. If not, then we will continue our debugging session and eat up all the time from Antoine's demo. Sorry, Antoine. Oh, dude, this doesn't work. Something is
Hey,
wrong with it.
can you point to like your previous post? Are there previous Slack posts that we could point to that would show the experience?
Uh, yes, maybe we could use that because,
Okay.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh, Narender, I can also suggest one possible option is that you run this slash sfhq connect in Slack. Can you go
One
in Slack
second.
and just run
Yes.
the slash sfhq connect? That might solve the issue.
Actually, we don't have any HQ.
Try sfhq. Yeah, do you see
Yes.
this? Yeah, this one. Can you run that command?
Yeah, so it says you are already connected to the Salesforce Slack instance.
Okay, so there is a problem somewhere else.
Yeah, I thought this would be the problem, but apparently this is not. So I guess we need to just skip this unless we want to extend this for really long. So what I'm gonna do is I'll leverage what I already have and we can just look at the existing flow. So basically what happens is when a user is created and I have a flow here which in, sends a Slack sends a flow to Slack for this new user. So what they receive or what they see in their Slack is something like this, where they see, "Hi Jane, we are happy to have you at Force Panda. Could you spare 5 minutes to tell us a bit more about your preferences?" Blah blah blah. And once they come in here and if they click on Submit Preferences, they are able to see their name, their alias, their address, and then they see this button where they choose their preferences. For example, are they a laptop or Windows user or a Mac? What's their t-shirt size, their food preferences? And then additionally, we can also ask them, are they interested in receiving a welcome kit? So let's say, why not? And once this happens, you have an error because apparently this doesn't, but essentially what happens in the background is these preferences are submitted and sent back to an approval process, when an approval process notification is sent back to the manager of Jane, who is me in this case, and I see here something like this. And initially what you will see here is an approval button, and you can just click, and also a reject button. You can just click on approve or reject button based on what you want to do. So here I have approved the request, and accordingly Jane Doe should also receive a message once the manager approves the request saying, "Hey, your manager has approved your submissions. You will see your welcome kit in next couple of days." So that's basically the demo, which should had gone successfully, but that's not the case. So anyways, let's take a look at how this has been implemented. So first things first, we need to create a flow on user object which initiates this action. And what basically this action does is it is a action which sends a flow to user in Slack. Now, in order to send a flow to user in Slack, we need to create that flow so the users are able to interact with that flow in Slack. How you do that is normally when you go to a flow or when you start building a flow, it looks something like this. So it has to be a screen flow, obviously. And then when you go and save the flow, you will be prompted, which looks something like this. And in the advanced section, what you have to choose is make this flow available in Slack. This basically marks or enables your flow to be able to run in Slack. Rest of the things you can keep it as it is. You hit done. So here is the flow that I have created in order which is displayed to the Slack user. So first screen, we gather all the details of the user, and we just get set up default value for city, address, blah blah blah. And also one thing, something interesting for you to note is that when you check the list of input components that are available for you in this flow, you will see that there are only 10. So this is something because at the moment Slack only supports these components, and hopefully they'll support many more going forward. So in the screen 2, we have a user preference where users are able to submit their preferences, and when we record their preferences accordingly. And finally, before that, we also give them a screen where they can choose what they want to receive in a welcome kit: diary, for example, stickers, mugs, bag, headphones. And in the end, we also had a screen where we can prompt them by saying, hey, please choose your benefits. Mostly companies offer different benefits, so we are prompting them to say, hey, are you a foodie, are you a traveler? You can also avail your education training benefit, blah blah blah. So this is how we get the information from the user straight from Slack. And then we update the employee record. The reason we are doing this on employee record is you cannot build approval process on user object. That's why we have this employee object, which you would need to maintain additionally in case you want to have this whole thing set up. So here we are just setting the fields, and we are setting the onboarding status of the employee record to manage to pending manager approval. This will basically initiate a submission for approval. We here submit this record for approval, and once this approval request is sent to the manager of the user, what happens is, now this is the interesting part and the nice part, that when the moment you integrate Slack with your with your org, you don't have to do anything special to receive notifications from Slack. The approval notifications from Slack, they will be automatically sent to the user, make granted that the user has actually checked in or connected their Slack instance to their respective Salesforce, or then they will be able to just directly receive the notifications. Okay, so maybe, and then what happens next is when you save and activate this flow, what happens is a Slack action is generated which you can use in your flow. So let's go back to the flow, which gets triggered on user creation, and let's add this action. So when you add an action, how this action is created is the name of the action is actually the name of the flow. So make sure you don't get confused. So the name of my flow was something had to do with user onboarding. So you see user onboarding get user preferences. So the moment you create your flow and save it, this action is automatically generated behind the scenes for you to use this. And this basically sends your flow to Slack. So I have already configured this, so we will take a look at that. So here we have different sets of inputs. Initially, we use this Salesforce for Slack app, which is basically something you install in your Slack app directory from the app directory. And yes, and then once you go through the process, it will prompt you to connect to your Salesforce org, and that's how you get things rolling. And then you also have to select the Slack workspace, in which way you might have a lot of workspaces associated with your sales org, so you can use multiple workspaces here. Additionally, what is also interesting is you can actually execute the action as a Slack app or also as a user. Normally I would recommend using a Slack app because it's less work. Unless you want to go into a permissions issue, there might, if you use a user who runs Flow in user context, then make sure to have the right permissions for that user so you don't get into trouble. And finally, the conversation ID. So this conversation ID actually comes in from this can come in from two ways. So if you want to post a message to a group of, for example, you can have a general group in your org. So you, if you want to post this flow in this channel, then what you can do is you can copy the ID from here. Otherwise, what if you want to send this to an actual user, because you don't expect to log in and as that user and copy the conversation ID for that user, because normally you don't have access to that kind of stuff. So the idea here is you can just map your user within Salesforce, as we saw in the Slack user mappings, and then you can straight away use the user ID, and that will automatically send the message or this flow trigger automatically to this user. And then you can also set a message what you want to send to this user, that in addition to your flow. And then you can also set a label which invokes your flow when the user runs the flow in the Slack. So this is how it looks. And once you have, and the final piece of the puzzle is you send back a message to the user who who receives a notification, hey, your manager has approved your submission. So you can just use an action which is called send Slack message. And I have already configured this, so you can use this as it is. I have hard coded the conversation ID, but you can just use your normal record.user ID, and that should be able to send the message to the appropriate user. And yeah, that's how you set up your Salesforce to Slack automation.
All right. Thank you, Narender, for that demo. I guess we didn't pay the demo gods, but appreciate you showing us how to go about troubleshooting and setting up the connection. All right. Antoine, over to you. Hopefully you have better success with your demo.
Yeah, I actually played the demo gods earlier this morning, so I hope we will be fine.
All right. So can you share with us your use case and solution using Flow Orchestration and Slack?
Yep, absolutely. So let's bring the slides up. So let's set the stage here. We'll be a company called Northern Trail Outfitters, obviously an e-commerce company selling hiking material. And Nina is our loyal customer. She's been, buying stuff at NTO for a while, and she just ordered hiking shoes for a big hiking trip that she has this weekend. And she wrongly selected the sustainable shipping, which means that the shoes will actually arrive after the trip. So that's not ideal. So now Nina wants to call NTO to make sure that she can get the hiking shoes as quickly as possible. So we'll also meet Luca, and Luca is our customer service agent. He's the one answering customers, and he's very passionate about helping them and providing support, especially when it's related to expedited shipping or any customer claims. The problem for Luca is that this is what his desktop actually look like. Northern Trail Outfitters has acquired many companies out there, and all of them have different systems. So you can imagine that they are using different ERP, different like many different systems. And every time there is an order change, Luca has to go through many different software to actually update the order. So this is the daily routine that is happening today as Nina is actually calling the customer service. So Nina is calling, then Luca is taking the request and creating the case based on the phone call. And then he requests expedited shipping. This goes directly to a shipping manager working at the warehouse that will be looking at the shoes and checking that they can actually send them in an expedited way. Today, this is going through an email, so we'll have to wait until the email is received, processed, then the shipping is approved. And then this is up to Luca now to update all those systems, the order management system, the NetSuite, like NetSuite, eventually SAP. And then at the very end, then he can actually close the case and let Nina knows that the shoes will be arriving on time. Unfortunately, this process takes up to 2 days. So that's not ideal. Obviously, we just missed the mark with Nina. She's really upset because she'll probably never get her shoes on time. So let's see now what this process looks like if we use Flow Orchestration for a process like this. So first of all, we start again from Nina calling NTO. And then Luca is taking the call again and requesting expedited shipping. So that's now where we start automating this process. Instead of sending an email to a shipping manager, this shipping manager works in Slack, doesn't want to use Salesforce on a day-to-day basis, want to make sure that we notify that person in the right channel. So that's why we'll be using Slack, exactly the same example as Narender was presented before. And the shipping manager quickly approved because you received a notification in Slack, quickly approved this. And then this is where the real magic happened, because all our orchestration will actually update the OMS system, update NetSuite, and then finally update SAP, and then automatically send an email to Nina about the new order delivery information. So Nina is super happy. This process took like 5 minutes, and it's really, really effective. So now let's see it in action. So I'm going to stop sharing here and sharing my screen, another screen. And then I will go through this example here. All right, so let me just switch this. All right, so we are here in Salesforce. This is Luca's view of Salesforce. It's the service console. And the very first thing we want to do here is to make sure that we are creating a case for Nina. So let's create a case here and then call this request expedited shipping. And the case owner is Luca. The asset is actually our NTO hiking shoes, and the account is Nina Smith. So now this case has been created. So that's when we start our orchestration. And you can see on the right side that we have the work guide prompted instantly that asks, okay, it looks like it's something related to shipping. Do you want to update the shipping method? Yes, we want to update the shipping method. We want express delivery because we want to make sure that you receive the shoes as quickly as possible. We need to provide some business justification. So I'm going to just copy paste here per customer request for this automate this episode. And then we click the update shipping option. So if you remember in the slides, the next step is actually a Slack message going to the shipping manager. So let's go into Slack now. And we see that we have a new message in the warehouse team channel. And that's the message coming from Service Cloud for Slack. And it looks like we have some approval that needs to be provided. Gonna click on that button, and what you can see here, as this was presented before, is a screen flow. So all the information here is dynamic, all coming from Salesforce. We are looking for the asset name, we are looking for Nina's address, and we want same-day delivery. So it's actually today that we'll be delivering those shoes. Do we have them in the warehouse? Yes, we do. So we're gonna approve this shipping update, and then click next. And then now what I want to show you here is what the orchestration actually looked like. So we're going to refresh this, and we can see here that we have an orchestration that is in progress. And what is really cool with orchestration is that you can see the exact execution step by step in the debugger. So here I'm going to open this orchestration, and we can see exactly how it is structured. So we start this orchestration when the case is created. Then we present the shipping options to the service agent. So that's what we did here. Then we confirm shipping with the shipping manager. That's the Slack step. And then after that, that's where we do some magic here by updating the order in the OMS and SAP and NetSuite. So all of this is happening now. And if I open the MuleSoft RPA, so here we have our composer flow that is currently running. It's currently it's being triggered right now, as you can see. So we have all this execution that is happening now. If I look at the RPA process, which is also triggered to update the OMS system, I can see that this is the update shipping method in OMS that is running. There is no super easy way to show you what an RPA, or robotic process automation bot, will actually do within the software. The best I can show you is how it is configured. So that's basically this BPN diagram here that we use to connect to an old system where we will have to manually, automatically or manually move the cursor and save the information on this specific screen. So all of this has been pre-configured. It's actually happening right now. And now if I go into the order of Nina in NetSuite, so you see Nina here, and then if you look at the memo here, if I refresh that page now, I should be able to see the latest memo that I've provided at the beginning of this demo, which was per customer request for automate this episode. So now we see that the sales order has been updated in NetSuite. And if I come back to my case and I refresh the case here, I should be able to see as Luca that all my systems have now been updated. So my OMS system has been updated successfully. NetSuite is updated, SAP is updated. And you know what? Even the customer has already received an email about this update. So all of this is good to go. Can just close the case, and that will automatically close the case and also finish my orchestration. So if I go back to this, so now we have completed this service agent review. And what is also interesting here is that I was mentioning the audit capabilities of Orchestrator earlier today. If I look at this specific run that just completed, and I go into my run log here, I can see all the details of everything that happened during my orchestration. So I can see that this specific user updated the shipping options in 30 seconds. And then we move on to confirming the shipping with the shipping manager here in Slack. And then refresh the case, and then we updated order in SAP, we updated in NetSuite, and then we ended up going through the review from the service agent. So as you can see, I can have a full display of all the information that happened in my orchestration, and I can actually run reports on that. So you can potentially open a Salesforce report and look at the different execution of that process and see how much time it takes for each of them. All right, so let's go back to our slides now. To finish this demo. So I wanted to share just a few information about the roadmap for Flow Orchestration. So here it is in Spring 23. So what you already have today, you can run the orchestrations on mobile. Very, very useful if you have people working on the go. And we also have orchestration templates that lets you create a template of an orchestration and potentially share it and customize it based on the different team needs that you have internally. We have a pretty big summer 23 release coming in with the ability to have step comments. So all the logs that I was just showing you, you will have the ability to add comments into those steps. So think about an approval process where you need to provide some comments. You can now store the comment information into the logs. So very useful for auditing purpose. One thing that we'll be adding also in summer is a MuleSoft step. So everything you saw that was connected to NetSuite, SAP, and the OMS system is all powered by MuleSoft. So we'll be adding a MuleSoft step so that you can easily connect your MuleSoft APIs if you're a MuleSoft customer right into Flow Orchestration and really combine human steps and system steps. We'll be also integrating into the Salesforce to-do list, and we'll have a better Canvas experience with a better draft mode. Finally, the big feature that is coming in winter later this year is conditions for steps that will help you better control the execution of your orchestration by pausing and resuming steps based on different conditions in the Salesforce database. And then finally, the logs will be exposed, and we'll be disabling the email notifications that can be sometimes not useful for some of our customers. I also want to bring up that we have a brand new hands-on challenge in Trailhead to start building your very first orchestration. So that's the one on the right side here. You can build very quickly in an hour. You can build a human resource orchestration with for hiring a new person. Very easy to go through and to learn about the basics of flow orchestration. So I strongly encourage everyone to go through that. And that's it, Jen. I guess back to you.
Great. Thanks, Antoine. Love the demo. That was very informative. And thank you for sharing the roadmap with us.
Thank you.
Excuse me. So as a reminder, if you have any questions for Narender or Antoine on anything, Flow, Slack, roadmap, any product questions, please start your question with a Q colon so it's easier for me to identify that amongst the chat in the audience. So we'll just give a minute for folks to ask questions, and then we'll be right back. So we have a fairly quiet audience today. I'm not seeing any questions right now. Antoine, what are some of the common product questions that you get from Trailblazers?
The biggest question I got is, when do I use flow orchestration versus flow? I think that's the biggest one. I think one thing that is also coming in is the questions about evaluation flows. So evaluation flows are kind of a concept in flow orchestration that lets you control the execution and the pausing and resuming of an orchestration. That's hard to grasp, and that's why we are introducing condition for steps at the end of this year, where that will be a lot easier to understand, in a sense that you will basically be setting a condition exactly like for a record-to-record flow. When you set your start condition, you'll be setting that as a step, the step level. So for every step, you will be able to say, I'm going to start this step only when this specific field on that specific object has this value. So that will make things a lot easier for you to configure everything into one single place, instead of having to rely on another flow that will define if the condition is met or not. So that I'm very excited about this feature, and that's really something that will help make orchestration a lot more accessible, a lot more easier to use and to build.
And how would you recommend someone go and start learning flow orchestration, like especially if you're fairly new to Flow Builder? Like, what would you recommend as their journey to ramp up and get started with flow orchestration?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you need to have some basic knowledge about flow, but you don't need to be like a super advanced admin or a fanatic to actually understand flow orchestration. I think the idea is really to connect all your flows together. So I can totally imagine a place where admins will be building the flows as building blocks, and then someone who is familiar with the process itself will actually create the orchestration and connect all those building blocks together. So you don't have to be very familiar with flow. We're using the same builder. So there are some logic that you have to understand, like passing variables from one step to another, or what is the difference between an auto launch flow and a screen flow. But that's fairly basic, I would say. So if you really want to learn about how to automate sophisticated processes in Salesforce, start from Trailhead. We have 2 trails. One is called Orchestration Basics to understand all the objects that we are creating. And then you have this Build an HR Orchestration that will help you get familiar with the very first step of creating stages and steps, and also managing the execution of your orchestration using pause and resume.
Great. Narender, I have a question for you. So, for someone who wants to start playing around with Flow and Slack, like how would you recommend they get started with that?
Yes, we actually have a awesome documentation for this, and there are also few blog posts around the ecosystem. One will be on the Salesforce admin blog, and we already have one on an official sf.com as well, which also has a lot of resources. So yeah, in all, I think the documentation is pretty great. So if you just go and take a look at the documentation, and also the whole experience of integrating the Slack app within the Salesforce is also very convenient. So if you just go to setup and look at search for Slack, it will just show you what are the things that you need to consider, and it also will link you to the appropriate documentation for each step that is required. So it's in a nutshell, it's very well documented and very well categorized what steps are need to be done and very well ordered. So you can straight away jump into your org, given that you have a Slack workspace already, and then you can connect search in your setup Slack, and then you can start integrating whatever apps, because there are a lot of apps that you can integrate with your Salesforce instance.
Great. Thanks, Narender. All right. So let's move on and do a recap. All right, so here's what we learned from Narender: how to set up Slack integration in Salesforce, how to use screen flows in Slack, and then how to approve Salesforce approval requests directly in Slack. And from Antoine's presentation, we learned how to use Flow Orchestration to integrate with ERP vendors like SAP or NetSuite. We also learned how to leverage Slack to streamline your business process, and then how to get visibility into the overall execution of the process. Now I'm excited for this session for next month, where I get to collaborate with a colleague, Principal Architect Evangelist at Salesforce, Tom Letty, along with a certified technical architect, Melissa Shepard. And they will talk about well-architected automation, because admins are architects too. So set the reminder now on the live stream page and be reminded of it later. All right, so now it's your turn. We have a brand new orchestration project in Trailhead, as Antoine mentioned. So go check that out. And also go to platformdemos.com and start learning from an existing orchestration demo. That's new to me as well. So that's pretty cool. Go check that out. And also learn from fellow colleagues on our Flow Orchestration Trailblazer community. And you can follow them by going to all the short links that you see on the screen. And I want to give a huge thank you to Narender for coming back, for Antoine for being guests on this month's Automate This.
Thank you.
Thanks,
And
Jen.
thank you to all of you for joining us for this Automate This episode. I look forward to seeing you at future episodes. And I love getting feedback from you. So talk to me. Tell me what you look for in these episodes. Complete this quick survey and let us know what you liked and want to see more of in the future. All right. And just a reminder, the best way is to be, The best way to be notified of our live stream is to set a reminder on the live stream episode page, and you'll get a reminder on the day of the episode. We'll also post upcoming sessions on all of our various social channels, so follow us on Twitter at Salesforce Admins, no I, on LinkedIn, and the Trailblazer community. And we will see you next month.